Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Woodpeckers Deep Dive. My name's Jeff Ferris. Welcome to my shop, and today we are going to take a closer look at Woodpeckers' newest product. This one is very exciting. We've had a lot of interest in this since we released it just a few days ago. This is Woodpeckers' Exact-90 miter gauge. We're going to take a look at the tool, and we're going to answer some questions that we've heard over and over again on social media and from our customer service department. All right, let's get started. When we started to develop a new miter gauge that we wanted to fit on lots of different saws, new saws and old saws and cheap saws and expensive saws, we decided that we needed to develop a bar that would fit as many as possible. And that's how we came up with the Woodpeckers miter bar. Now this is a unique design in that it uses nylon leaf springs. The nylon leaf springs, there are 5 of them along here, and they will press the bar against the right side of the miter slot. And now what that does is make sure that no matter how sloppy the miter slot is, we're always going to get a perfect fit against the right side of the bar. That's the one we're guiding off of. All right, so let's talk about how this works and which saws this will fit. So if we take a look here with a fractional set of calipers, if I check the bar, you can see it's just a little bit under 3/4 of an inch. Now I'm going to move this down and I'm going to put it on one of the nylon springs. And you can see that now it's just a little bit over 3/4 of an inch. Now, if I squeeze on my calipers, I can compress that down until it reads a perfect 3/4 of an inch. That's how all these springs work. Whether your bar is a tiny bit undersized, right on, or a tiny bit oversized, it will always adjust by compressing those 5 springs. So what that means for you is, if your miter slot is anywhere close to 3/4 of an inch, this is going to fit. Now you also have to be concerned about the thickness. The thickness of this is 3/8 of an inch. So if you are close to 3/8, as long as it's not thinner than 3/8, you're going to be fine. If you're a little bit deeper than that, it's going to be okay. If you're right on 3/8, it's going to be perfect. And let's talk about T-slots. A lot of miter gauge slots have a T-slot. We have 2 washers, not just one, to fit your T-slots. But if your saw does not have a T-slot, you just take these 2 screws out and the washers come right off. Now, let's take a look at one more thing on the bar before we go over to the table saw and make some cuts. The bar, in some of the photography, the bar looks rough because there's a surface finish on there that makes it look like it's got a texture to it, but it's actually very, very slick. What you're seeing there is a plating process. This is electroless nickel plated. Now what that means is you have a very, very low friction surface. It's really slick. It slides in the slot very easily. It also protects the bar from rusting. All right, let's go over to the table saw now. We're going to show how to set this up, how it works on saw stop table saws, and we'll make some cuts to see how it works. Now the first thing that you want to notice on the Exact-90 miter gauge is that this head is fixed. It is not adjustable. You can't cut any other angle other than square with the Exact-90. We wanted to make that only square because so many people have a problem getting an adjustment back to square once they cut an 45 or something else with their saw. Trying to get back to 90 can be a real pain. So we made this completely fixed so that it only cuts 90 degrees. Now, since it is fixed, we need to talk about the alignment between the blade and the fence. We calibrate this at the factory with some very precise equipment. So for the vast majority of you, you will never have to touch this at all. You drop it in, you start making cuts. It's square. If you make a test cut and it's not square, then we have to talk about the procedure that we need to go through to get it squared up to your saw. Now the calibration adjustment is right there, but I want you to check a couple things before you even think about adjusting that calibration screw. If your test cut isn't square, the problem more than likely is not your miter gauge. The problem is the relationship between your saw blade and the miter slot. So the first thing you want to do before you mess with the adjustments on the Exact-90 is to check the alignment between the miter slot and the saw blade. For that, we're going to use Woodpeckers saw gauge. So with the saw gauge set up at the front of the blade, I'm just on the W in woodworking, and I'm just about at the 0 point on my scale. Now I'm going to roll that same point on my saw blade to the other end. Bring it up to it. And we went from just a little over 0 to just a little over 2. So I'm within 2 thousandths. That's not perfect, but it's well within the tolerance of the saw. So if you've checked the alignment between the blade and the slot and it's within a couple thousandths and you're still getting a cut that isn't perfectly square, that's when you want to think about using the calibration adjustment. All right, so if your miter gauge slot and your blade are parallel with each other, then what we need to do is set the back fence of the Exact-90 square to the blade. So I'm going to use a precision triangle to set that up. And of course, mine's already where I want it, so we don't have to make any adjustments. But here's how I would adjust that. We're going to loosen this knob, which, by the way, we have flats on there, so you can use a wrench, 15/16. We're going to unlock that. And then the calibration screw is a cam, and it'll move that arm just a little bit, one way or the other, so that you can dial in a perfect match between the front fence and your saw blade. Once you get it set, lock it back down. Don't be afraid if you don't have a lot of grip strength. Put a 15/16 wrench on there and give it just a little bit of a nudge. And then you'll never have a problem with that moving again. So we have this beautiful laser engraved scale on the back fence, but we want to take a look at how to make that accurate. Of course, every brand of table saw is going to have a different distance between the edge of the slot and the blade. And so here's how we're going to go through a alignment procedure to get that scale accurate. We're going to unlock the stop and bring it the back side of the stop, not the front side, but the back side. We're going to bring that back side to a 1/2 inch. The stop itself is exactly 1/2 inch wide, and that's how we're going to get our calibration. So we'll bring that down to a 1/2 inch and lock it. So now we're going to unlock the fence. We're going to come up to the blade and we're going to adjust the fence over until it just kisses the tooth of the saw blade. So let's see how we did on setting up our scale. I've got this set up for 8 inches. We're going to make a cut, see how close it is to 8 inches. Right on the money. The calibration process positions the end of the fence 1/8 of an inch away from the saw blade. Now we've had a lot of folks that own saw stops that are concerned about the fence being that close to the saw and tripping the brake on their saw stop. I want to show you that that's nothing to be concerned about. So you may not ever see this box when you're using your saw, because you're supposed to be paying attention to what's going on the saw. But this red and green light are an indication of when there's a fault condition in the saw. So this piece of extruded aluminum is exactly the same type of material as our back fence. And so what I want to show you is that to get a fault condition on the saw stop, you actually have to have this material in contact with the blade. Close does not count. You have to actually have complete contact before it will trip. All right, so we can see the gap that we have between the fence and the blade, and we don't have a fault condition. Now let's bring this up like we were making a cut on it. Now there's right where the end of the fence is. There's about a 1/16 of an inch. There's about a 32nd of an inch. I'm guessing that's right about a 1/64 of an inch. Still no fault. Now I'm half that, and we still don't have a fault. That's less than a 128th of an inch. We're not going to get a fault until I go that last little bit and get actual contact. So we've had some questions on social media about the scale. There are a couple of sequences in the product video where it looks like you can't see the scale. That's actually a trick of the camera. It's laser engraving actually anneals the metal. It makes it dark and black, but viewed straight on. And even with the human eye, adjust for things that a camera can't. Like if I get at this angle, that engraving still looks black to me. But if we shot it with a camera at this angle, it wouldn't show up at all. There's something about the human eye that makes it a much better lens than a camera lens. We all know that. The eye is the perfect lens. A camera lens is a bad approximation of that. But let me assure you that when you're looking at this scale, you're going to see crisp, dark, black marks, just like this angle that we set up where the camera is directly overhead. Now there's another accessory for this that comes with the Exact-90, comes with it standard. You may not see me use it very much because I only use it when I have a specific job for it. And that's the Sacrificial Fence. This just slides. It has 2 T-nuts on the back side, and it just slides into the face of the fence. Okay? Well, what about the flip stop? It doesn't come all the way down now. Sure it does. All we have to do is slide it off. Then we're just going to move it to the front track and the fence extrusion. And now you can see it's a perfect fit with the Sacrificial Fence on. So when do you want to use the Sacrificial Fence? Well, there's a couple of things that this really does nicely. Let's say that your saw blade has got some age to it and it's not cutting quite as clean as you would like, but you don't have another saw blade and you got to get the job done. We're going to support the back side of our cut with the Sacrificial Fence, and that's going to eliminate blowout on the back side. So I'm just going to put this in here. We're going to make our cut. And the back edge of that is absolutely perfect. The other advantage to this is if I've got a very, very tiny offcut that might get caught in the saw blade, I can push it right past the blade and out the back. Let me show you what I mean. We made the miter bar on the Exact-90 the longest in the industry. What does that extra length get you? Well, it gets you more crosscut capacity. On most 10-inch table saws with a miter gauge, not a cutoff box, you can cut a full 24 inches. I've got this piece right here, which is about 24 and a half. And on this saw, we're well within our capacity. Now, one of the other things that we've had asked on social media several times is just how accurate is the Exact-90 and what happens if you try the 5-cut test. Well, we're going to do that right now. We're going to do the 5-cut test to check how square the miter gauge is, but we're not going to do it on this brand new top-of-the-line saw stop. We're going to do it on a 1961, that's 60-year-old Craftsman table saw that I paid $100 for at a flea market. Let's see what happens. Now, if you're not familiar with the 5-cut test, it's a test for the accuracy of any 90-degree cutoff fixture. Basically, we're going to work all the way around a piece, and then the 5th cut is a repeat of the 1st cut, and then we'll see how much variance there is from one end to the other on the off-cut piece. That's going to tell us how close we are to being dead square. This, as far as I know, the first guy to make this popular on YouTube was an excellent cabinet making teacher by the name of William Ing. And William did a cutoff table, and this was his test to prove how perfect his cutoff table was. But we're going to take it just a little bit further than William or anybody else that I've seen has done. We have actually destroyed every single edge on our test piece. I took it to the bandsaw and just randomly cut a completely irregular edge. There is nothing straight or square anywhere on this piece. Let's see how we do. So that's 4 cuts. We should have a perfectly square piece. We're going to take this now, turn it one more time so that the first cut is our off-cut piece. We're going to set up to take a relatively small off-cut there, and we'll make our 5th cut. Now, there's some elaborate mathematics that you can go through that tells you exactly how to calculate the angular error from the differential between those two pieces. I'm not going to get into that because you have to have an error there to begin with to actually measure it. And we are dead even between those two pieces. There's no variation, so we are perfectly square. Now, the 5-cut test is great, but you know what? I still prefer a square. Hey folks, thanks so much for watching today's episode of Deep Dive, taking a closer look at Woodpecker's amazing new Exact-90 miter gauge. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you had some of your questions answered. If you liked what you saw today, be sure and hit the subscription button and the notification bell. That way you'll know about every one of our great videos right when they're released. And if you did like it, be sure and give us a thumbs up. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time on Deep Dive.